Hi, I'm Jason, and today we're going to be reviewing the Kanstul Mariachi trumpet. This trumpet was made in Anaheim, California. It was designed with the classic series valve set, meaning that the top caps have different threads than the signature series. And this one is finished in polished silver and gold. I'm going to go over some of the features of this horn. We're going to measure the bore size, the Venturi to the lead pipe, the gap with a few different mouthpieces, and we're going to explore some things about it that you normally wouldn't find in a trumpet review, including a full spectrum analysis with at least 2 variations of mouthpieces so that you can see what kind of spectrum and color you're going to get out of this horn. So let's first start with the main features. The finger buttons are relatively thin. The springs feel fairly tight. They do have a little bit of a clunkiness to them, and I attribute that to the fact that they are using some kind of nitrile bumpers in the top caps. If you bought this horn, I would recommend making it quieter by changing these to felts. That would probably make a huge difference. I'm going to open up one of these pistons so you can see. So that's what the piston ports look like. Kanstul makes really nice pistons, and they play really well. If you noticed on the piston, the ports don't have bumps in them, or they're very tiny bumps. And you can usually pull the second slide and find the most bumps in any piston, so I'll pull that out so you can see it. And if you look inside the holes, there aren't a bunch of big bumps. That's because the piston has a longer throw. Now, a lot of players request short throw valves because they're thinking they'll play faster. In reality, short throw valves will create more bumps in the piston ports, meaning that 2 of the ports are sharing the same space, so they create kind of a handmade version. It's like a hand burnished version of a wall that shares the 2 spaces. And when we do that in trumpet manufacturing, then we're changing the impedance on different notes. So when you press the second valve down, it may feel completely different than if you press the third, and that's because there's more or less impedance based on how much of that wall was shared. Essentially, it's like making the bore size smaller. So longer throw valves typically are a better idea. Harrelson trumpets have standard throw valves, so they don't have a bunch of bumps in them either, but they look shorter because we have the taller top caps. All right, so I just wanted to cover that because there's a lot of misinformation on the internet about short and long throw valves. Long is actually better if you want a better playing horn. Now, this tuning slide is the wide radius semi-round. We've got standard water keys on this one. And when I pull this slide out, I'll do that close up. When I pull it out, I like to check this. It comes very, very close to the belt. Literally, it hits it with the water key before you can pull it all the way out. I'm not a fan of designs that do this. Unfortunately, a lot of trumpet companies have created horns that have extra long slides, and I have never been able to determine why they do that. I think on here, it's because they were copying something like the Constellation, but even some of their standard models have this same kind of issue. And I would say like half the manufacturers in the world have that issue. So if you wanted to fix that yourself, you could literally trim some of these tubes, put them back inside, leave them there permanently, and have a shorter slide to pull out. And that would probably prevent you from dinging your bell. So that's another quick tip to be able to modify your horns simple and easy at home without hurting anything, and then prevent damage later on. So this horn does have a big bell, and I'll have to grab a tape measure or a ruler to measure it. I don't think I grabbed one, but the bell is bigger in diameter, and it's a fairly large taper. Bracing on this one, we've got straight bracing on both the lead pipe and bell sections, and it looks like a floating brace style. We have 1 brace in the tuning slide area, and then 1 on either side of the second valve. We have slide stops on the third and the first slides. I'm not really sure why the first has it, because we also have the trigger, and we have an adjustable third ring. So those are the main features of this horn. Now it's time to measure the bore size. And we're going to do that by pulling the second slide and the tuning slide. And I'm going to bring those up close to the camera so you can see the actual measurement. So here we have the tuning slide and my gauge pin. There we go. This gauge pin is a 437, and this is the biggest pin I could find that fits in the tube. And there it is, it fit in. And you can see that is a 437. Where is it? Right there, 437. Now we're going to do the same with the second slide. And the second slide just barely fit in. So 437 is the bore size on this horn. Next, we will measure the Venturi of the lead pipe. And we're going to do that with a simple tool that I invented years ago that you can purchase and measure the Venturi of all of your horns. This will tell you some valuable information that can help you compare one horn to another. This is the Venturi measurement tool. As you can see, I've blackened it with a Sharpie marker, and I'm going to insert it here, and then I'm going to rub it into where it touches the lead pipe. And it did wear off some of the marker that we couldn't see before. I'll pull that up close with some calipers. So it rubbed off on this band right up here. I know that because those two I just rubbed off on a different horn. So you can either go into our instruction sheet and see the measurement of that band, or I can just measure it right here with the calipers. You can go into our instruction sheet and see what that band measures, or you can just use a set of calipers. That's a 358. So the Venturi of this horn is quite large, a 358. Using this tool, which is our gap measurement tool, we are going to determine the mouthpiece gap of this receiver on this horn. So I insert it till it stops right there. Then I'm going to make a mark. You can see I made a mark for another horn. And I'm going to do that off camera because it's not easy to hold it up here. And then we'll put a mouthpiece in and compare the sizes. There is another way to do that. You could simply use a set of calipers, put the calipers inside the receiver till it hits the edge of the lead pipe, and then measure that size. And then you can zero it out on your calipers. When you measure the mark on your mouthpiece, it will give you the gap. So we can do this either way. I've inserted my mouthpiece, and now I've put a little mark right there, and I'm going to measure that mark. Now I have my calipers. I measure to that line, and I've already created the offset. My gap is 0.95 or 95 thousandths. Let's do this again with a Bach mouthpiece. Here we have a Bach mouthpiece. I marked a line right there where it meets the receiver. Using my calipers once again, with the original offset to the lead pipe in the receiver, I can now see that I am almost at the line. There, I'm at the line. And my measurement is 143, meaning a Bach mouthpiece is giving me 143 thousandths gap. And here I have just marked a Schilke mouthpiece in the same receiver, and let's measure that one. Okay, and there's the Schilke. I get it lined up, and the measurement is 0.63, less gap. So we've measured the mouthpiece gap. On my mouthpiece, it was about 95 thousandths. On the Bach, it was bigger by quite a bit. And on the Schilke, it was a lot smaller. In general, your gap, usually you're going to find the best flexibility in slotting somewhere under 60. So 60 or less tends to be that sweet spot for most players. And the Schilke came closest to that. On a Harrelson 5mm, we would just give you a longer back bore, and then that would fill the gap. We also measured the Venturi to be 358, which is pretty big, much bigger than most other horns. And we found that the bore size was very small. That was a 437. Next, let's play this horn and record it on a spectrum analyzer with my standard setup mouthpiece. Then we'll make a few changes, try a couple mouthpieces, and we'll learn what our spectrum analysis reveals. In other words, is this a bright or a dark or somewhere in between type of tone. So the first thing we do is start a new file, which I've started right down here. And I'm going to go up and press record and play. So that is our first analysis. I'm going to press stop. I'm going to go back to the C, the low C. So here we have the low C. And you can see the fundamental. You can see the first partial, second, third, so on and so forth. We're looking at the amplitude of each of these, how many decibels we had on each pitch. And the fundamental is pretty strong. It's a nice wide heavy bass. The first partial is an octave, okay? And on here that is showing us which note that is. So that was a B flat in the staff. The next one was an F at the top of the staff. And this is a normal overtone series you would typically find. The next is B flat above the staff. And then we got a D, an F, and another B flat, and then it becomes the entire scale. So this is our spectrum analysis for this horn. As you can see, the first three partials are pretty even. So this has a nice even tone, meaning that there's not a lot of the lows or a lot of the highs. But as it tapers off higher and higher, you don't get any huge spikes. You have a little bit of a spike up here, so we have some sparkle, and a little bit right here. And those shapes, if I were to draw this out as a shape, we can overlap those with different mouthpieces and different horns and compare them, and then start to determine, hey, is this horn really dark or bright or somewhere in between? And some horns are dark and bright at the same time. So this one doesn't have a completely even amplitude level on all partials. Normally you see some spikes. So that was with my standard mouthpiece setup. Now I'm going to put in a different cup and a different throat that will make this mouthpiece shallower and more bright. So that's pretty simple. I'm just going to unscrew this. And I'm going to take the cup and the throat out. I've just got them stuck together right now. And I've got the shallower version right here. And we screw that back together. And now we're going to do another analysis. So I'm going to start a new one. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is put it right at the end, and I'm just going to record again over top. All right, I saw some things that definitely look different. So we're on that high C right here, and you can see that the first partial is a really big peak, and we didn't have that before on the high C. So let's go back to the previous high C. It's way back here. Make sure I've got the right one. Okay. My cursor doesn't want to move. There we go. So if we go back to the very beginning, I had played a low C. That's what it looked like. Then I went to the C above it. Then I went to the C above that. And I believe that was me playing some lip slurs. And now here we have the other C. So that was with the brighter mouthpiece. Here is the F, or I'm sorry, the G and the C again. And then this was the high C. And that is the peak I'm really talking about. Now we have a really big peak on the first partial, and then the second one is subdued. It's literally not as high of an amplitude. So this mouthpiece made a huge difference with this horn. And if I were playing mariachi, I may want one or the other based on my preferences. If I were playing lead, I'd probably want this setup for this horn. So hopefully that gives you some ideas on what you can do with the mouthpieces. Now I'm just going to play the horn for a minute. I'll leave the spectrum analyzer on so you can see what's happening, and you can just check it out. feels like a great playing horn. I would want less gap personally, but it feels good. Now if I go back to my other mouthpiece setup, it's just going to be a bigger, warmer tone. So there you have the Kanstul Mariachi Premier, and for the price, I would say it's a pretty decent option.